Tragedy on the Island of Vieques by Nina Colon. To understand the tragedy on Vieques, you have to first learn a little bit about the island. Vieques was founded in 1843 by Francisco Sienez and annexed to Puerto Rico in 1854. It is 21 miles long and 3 miles wide and rests between the main island of Puerto Rico and the island of St. Thomas. Vieques is known as La Isla Nena, Little Girl Island, and Isabel Segunda, Isabel II. The island is known for its broad history and also its beauty. The island is also home to one of Puerto Rico's three bioluminescent bays. The bioluminescent bay was officially declared the brightest recorded in the world by Guinness Book of World Records in 2008, holding a title of a national natural landmark since 1980 and considered the best example of a bioluminescent bay in the United States. Though the island boasts many beautiful sights, it also has a not-so-beautiful side about it. During the 1940s, the U.S. Navy purchased 70% of the land area of the Vieques, forcing thousands of people from their homes. The Navy would replace farms and sugar plantations with artillery storage and begin training U.S. NATO, South American, and CARICOM allied forces on said lands. War games and target practice with live ammunition began in the 70s and will continue into the following decades. Vieques was military controlled and was being littered with lead, depleted uranium, napalm, and many other contaminants. A total of 6 decades of intense military training, including bombing from air, land, and sea. In the 80s and 90s alone, the Navy dropped or fired on average 1,464 tons of bombs and explosives annually on Vieques. The accidental death of a Navy employee in March of 1999, a civilian guard named David Sands, who was killed, and 4 others wounded by a bomb dropped by a F-18 U.S. fighter plane, sparked furious protests. After the death of Mr. Sands, Governor Pedro Russell negotiated a staged withdrawal of the Navy from Vieques with President Clinton's administration. A huge march along the expressway in Hato Rey, the largest public demonstration in Puerto Rican history, demonstrated general rejection of the island's continued use for military exercises. The last year before protests interrupted maneuvers, the Navy dropped 23,000 bombs on the island, most of which contained live explosives. In May of 1999, the U.S. Navy admitted that it had tested radioactive depleted uranium shells on the island, and by 2003, they would finally leave the island after protests would force the Clinton and Bush administration to withdraw military presence. Many on the island blame the high cancer rate, 26% over Puerto Rico average, on the Navy's pollution. With the island's pollution around 10,000, Vieques is home to some of the highest sickness rates in the Caribbean. Since that time, it has been both a personal and political battle for what is right in regards to the cleanup of this polluted island. The presence of the Navy in Vieques has changed the island forever, and not in a good way, and their footprints remain. So my final question would be, is the tragedy of Vieques, the decades of military contamination, the unfortunate death of David Sands, the displacement of the residents of the island, the increased risk to residents for sickness and cancer, or the false promise from the feds to remove all military debris? Well, the answer is all. No government agency should be able to do this to any island, especially an island still inhabited by people who call it home. It was and still is a tragedy of catastrophic proportions.